Special thanks to the Parapost Network for the support of their community. Check out all the great podcasts on the Parapost Network on Facebook. Hi there, friends. Welcome to the No Small Stories podcast, where we explore paths less traveled with creatives and entrepreneurs from all walks of life and in all stages of their journey. No matter how small you start, your story is always a big deal to us. So let's dive into today's episode and meet our guest. So welcome everyone to another episode of the No Small Stories podcast. Today I get to sit down with Damon Della Greca, who runs Slasher TV. Hello, Damon. Thank you for being with me today.
How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm so excited to talk to you about this app because I am a horror fan. I enjoy horror as a genre of writing, of movies, of TV. So can you tell us just a little bit about what Slasher TV is, just to start, and introduce yourself just a little bit?
So Slasher is a mobile app and website. It's kind of like social media for horror. You've got your timeline for your posts and everything. You could make friends. But we also have other resources too. We've got an events calendar for all different kinds of like conventions and film festivals and things like that. Um, we've got uh, news and reviews partners like 𝓕𝓻𝓪𝓷𝓴𝓲,
Hmm.
Halloween Daily News and other companies like that. We've also got a cool movie database where you can rate, review, and add movies to all different kinds of lists for yourself. We have the same with books. So yeah, we're really just trying to give people things that they can enjoy. All the kind of stuff that a horror fan would really sort of be into. We're trying to
I
cover it.
I love it. I like I said, I went and I signed up for an account and I was on there playing around and looking around. And I do like that there is I don't want to, a lack of censorship is not what I necessarily want to say. And because it's not a bad thing, but like you do
Right.
allow for obviously, the gore special effects
Oh
and
yeah.
the imagery that in a lot of other social media platforms might be, censored or taken down or what have you. But it's part of the horror genre and it's part of the effects and the things that we really love as horror fans. So I
Yeah.
do really love that you have that element in there. So let me ask about you though. Like, where
Mm.
does your love of horror begin? Like, how did you come to the horror genre and realm and fall in love with it?
So I always loved um you know like I liked fiction. I like sci and fantasy and all kinds of stories. Um, but then one day I was just watching cable as a young kid and I happened to stumble upon Poltergeist.
Oh,
And I
that's a
just
good
sat
one.
there and watched the whole thing. And I was just captivated the whole time with not only how interesting the visuals were, but also how wild the story was.
Hmm.
It was one of those things where you want to look away, but you really can't.
Yeah.
So I was in, I was there for it. And then I would just go and seek it out. I would go and just look at all the things I would watch. It was USA Up All Night would sometimes have
Oh
movies
my
like that,
God. USA all night. Oh
right?
my
With
God.
Rhonda and
It's
um,
so good.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's a classic little thing I haven't thought about in a while. So thank you for that.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I caught Joe Bob Drive-In when he was on the movie channel TMC.
Oh, very cool.
Um, that was yeah. I don't know if that was his first, but it was certainly one of his earlier iterations of what he does.
Hmm.
Um, so to have seen that and sort of had that that guy who sort of knew the ins and outs and was all there to sort of guide you through it was really a cool thing. And to see that he's still doing it today is awesome.
Don't you just love that when you can see
Yeah.
that, someone who follows their passion and the things that they love to do and the things that really interest them, and it's really not a job because they never give it up, right? It's
Yeah.
it's who you are, it's what you do, and I love seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's really wild because it kind of came full circle for me because he actually gave us a couple of shout outs on his show that were completely unexpected. So,
That's amazing.
yeah, so my phone's blowing up. People are messaging me like, "Hey, man, put on Joe Bob." So I go and put it on, and he's like talking about it. I'm like, "Wow!"
What?
Like
That's
I
so
watched
cool.
this. Yeah, like I watched this guy as a kid. He sort of was one of my guides into horror and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. And now he's talking about like one of the things that I did. I'm like, that's really really that's cool.
That's when you know
Um,
you've made it. That's when you know that, here I am in this world really and truly for real.
Yeah. But it's things like that that I just have to sometimes take a step back and just go, that's something that and you know, I didn't expect it. I certainly appreciate every single time that, anybody talks about it. But somebody like that sort of throw you those shout outs, it really did mean a lot. And I certainly appreciated not only his uh you know his guidance into horror, but also the fact that, you know, I feel like he's sort of been there the whole way for me personally, and it's a
Mhm.
really interesting thing. Um, so
Yeah, it's they
I can't
say
be enough.
things like don't meet your heroes and things like that. But when your hero turns out
Mm,
to be someone who's supportive of what you do, like, wow, what a beautiful thing. And I feel like
yeah,
there is something about people who are into the horror genre, and maybe you can speak to this, but like I do feel like in the horror community, similar to the true crime community, in as much as someone from who's not a fan would look at that and think that we're all a bunch of creeps and degenerates and whatever else, it really is a great supportive community. Some of the best people that you meet are people who are interested in this stuff, and
yeah,
you know I think there's something to be said for the community element there that it really is great. And I think that, absolutely you're deserving of getting a shout out from your hero because look at you building a community and a space for people like that to continue to build their community around their horror passions. And so you absolutely deserve it. I really think that's great.
thank you. I appreciate.
So talk a little bit about what was it that made you want to start a community space like this? I mean, is there something that you were looking for those kind of people, or, how did you determine that this was something that was kind of necessary?
Yeah. So for a while, I had been really into the convention.
Mhm,
I was going to like you know kind of a year up and down the East Coast, checking out whatever I could get to. I love to go and hang out with the vendors and see all the cool stuff they have, stuff that they make.
mhm,
Um, and really just, I've made a ton of friends, in the vendor room.
mhm,
And occasionally I'd go in and check out the celebrities and just hang out and talk with them every once in a while. If it was not too busy, just to chat and get to know some other cool people.
mhm.
Um, so I really went for the social aspect of it and also, cool stuff.
Yeah, it's just fun.
Um, right, right. Um, so, you know, spending time with all these people, I would sort of come to learn about other conventions. It was sort of like this network of people that, what's the next convention everybody's going to be doing? Where do you go? What do you do? All that kind of
Mhm,
stuff. So it was really just an information exchange, but I found that it wasn't always good enough. Like a lot of times people would find out about things too late or,
mhm,
stuff like that, or not even know about them at all. So what I did was I just put together this calendar and I shared it with all of my friends and said, hey, here's all the conventions in the US and Canada, some horror adjacent conventions that you might want to check out. If anybody wants to go, talk together and see what you want to do. If you want to go together, if you want to share information about them, have at it.
So almost
Um,
kind of started as just like a friend group sort of thing that you're like
yeah, yeah.
just trying to
It was
help out my buddies, right? Like, let's do
right,
some fun
exactly.
stuff together.
Yeah, because I wanted to find out about all the conventions that I might be able to get to also. So it was really something that I was doing just, for myself, for my friends. But then, as I would go to more and more of the conventions, I would see more and more things that really just needed to exist for people. It's like, okay, we're having a great time here at the convention that we are at, but what do we do the rest of the time?
Hmm.
How are we connecting? How are we, you know, doing the things that we want to do when we're not here? So I really just sort of saw more and more of different types of needs from different types of people, fans like myself, the vendors, um, you know, even the convention promoters. So I really just sort of sat down and thought about it, and I would type up different ideas like, okay, how do we do things in ways that are going to help everybody and give them stuff that's important and useful. So really it just turned into this big, 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 big plan that's still kind of growing. And
And that's the brilliant thing, isn't it? It starts from one little seed and then it just keeps growing and evolving and
yeah,
expanding.
it's really wild, like how far this can go. Um,
Hmm.
because really we're all just people, right? We just happen to have very similar interests. And um, I've really spent a lot of time thinking about what it is to be a horror fan, to be a horror creator, to be a horror vendor, and just found all these different ways that I could help these people connect to the things that are important and useful. Um, so it really was a matter of that. Um, there's a lot of stuff out there that I'm not even touching on yet.
Hmm.
You're just seeing some of it, like some of the social aspect, the movies, book. But there's really a lot more. And for me, it drives me crazy because I have all these things on my head and on paper and everything. And I'm like, you
All
guys
these
aren't doing
ideas.
anything yet. Yeah, yeah. So it's like,
I'm with
you
you
guys
a
aren't
hundred
seeing any of
percent.
it. So
You
that's one
don't
of the
know
things that
what my
drives me
head is
crazy.
full of. If you could be
Right,
in
right.
here, you'd be terrified, but
Like,
excited.
like, I know what's going on. And I look at what we have so far, and I'm like, nothing. Like, I'm glad that everybody liked it so far. That's awesome. But I'm just like, this is nothing yet. Just wait until we can do the rest of it. And then it's going to be really, really cool. But so, in one of those weird places where I'm very critical of what I have because it's not to where it can be. But, I recognize that people do enjoy what we have so far. And I'm very appreciative of that. I'm glad that
I
they're
mean,
enjoying it.
that is such a sign, though, of being a creative person, though, isn't it? That, yes, this is great. These things I'm doing are great, but it could be so much greater and grander and bigger. And you just don't know the things that I have that I'm ready to show the world. And yeah,
Right, right.
there's such a, you're so excited about the looking forward and the things that are coming next, right? And it's
Yeah.
sometimes it can become a little bit challenging to kind of ground in the moment and say, no, like, look what I have and what I've done and how great this is. And, it can't help but grow and get more, it just more awesome from here. Right. So, but that is I find myself in that space lately, actually. So like, I totally
Yeah.
resonate with that.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, it's challenging when you have all those ideas and you've worked on things and you're just like, but it's just not out yet. And
Hmm.
you know, it's one of those things that kind of keeps you up at night and makes your mind just race a million miles an hour, like
Hmm.
with what could be. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's
I'm
crazy.
just conjuring in my mind right now already that we write a horror script together about what it's like to be inside the mind of an ambitious, creative person who's just like, you don't know the mountain that I have already moved in my mind. Why don't you come in
Right.
here and join me and see all of the awful little gremlins with their little pickaxes who are like shifting things, right?
No, for
Because
sure, for sure. Um, it's a lot. It's really a lot, and I think when when you don't have that kind of, I guess, mindset, like I find that some people have it and some people don't, and that's fine. It's just how everybody is. Everybody's different. Um, it's just kind of like I find it bizarre that other people don't, and other people find it bizarre that I do. So it's kind of like there's that gap in that middle ground
I
there.
was gonna say the
Um,
duality of human existence, it shows itself.
right.
You can't
Yeah.
avoid it.
Right. Exactly. But it's fun to and interesting to have those differences because it just sort of it at least for me it helps me sort of think that yeah I have to constantly remind myself that I'm not like everyone else. Everyone else is not like me, and we
Mhm.
have to find ways to connect that are in being, you know, so that way, um, people like me can make really cool things for people who may not think that way, and it's like when it kind of comes to be, it's like, okay, this is something that works for you, you know?
Yeah, no, I feel like that is another interesting element when you're a creative person who has a lot of different ideas, right? That
Yeah,
you know, I don't know if I know just like the best ways to say it, but I understand what you're saying. Sometimes you feel a little bit as though you have to sort of hold the mindset space of it can be for I don't know if I want to say maybe more people than you want to necessarily. It can feel a little bit like, you believe so hard in the things that you are doing and maybe don't necessarily feel like there's the support and belief around you that you might need, right? And so like that's something that I think that with like the building of a community like you're having, that's why it's so important,
yeah,
right? Because there are people like us who do have the like it can be done attitude and the looking towards the more, looking towards the next thing, looking towards how can we make it bigger? How can we make it better? How can you like dig into your passions that much deeper? Right. And
yeah,
sometimes being that example for everyone else can get a little bit exhausting, right? But that
yeah,
again, the value of having a community of like-minded people and a place to go where you can find that sort of camaraderie and the feeling of belonging and the feeling of support, right? It's the
yeah.
thing that can keep you going. So I mean, again, bravo to you again, because I do just like it's so exciting and I am excited to get on there more and play around more and meet more new people because it's again, you don't always find a space where you get to be weird and creepy and spooky and totally accepted for it, right?
For sure, for sure. And like you said, so many people who are into horror are really just some of the nicest people ever. Um,
Yeah.
and it's really cool to have that be sort of one of the stereotypes. People don't necessarily realize it,
Hmm.
who might not be into it. But for us, we know that that's kind of a stereotype. Horror fans are usually super nice people. Um,
Right. And
that's cool.
that is an interesting thing to me, and I wonder if you would like just take a little detour and talk about that for a second with
Yeah, of
me.
course.
So, like when I think of so horror fans or people who are into like paranormal, the supernatural, all those kind of like the I don't know if you want to say occult or esoteric elements, those kind of genres, those topics. It's the
Yeah,
same thing that I noticed that, like, they are some of the people you meet who are, like, the nicest, most compassionate, most thoughtful people, and I think
yeah,
that there is a certain amount of our willingness to look at the dark side, the ugliness, the possibilities of negative the negative capacities that humanity can have, right? Or the sort
yeah,
of the nightmare elements of human existence, that it does give you some, I don't know, additional capacity to be compassionate because you can like, I think it makes us look at people more in a more nuanced way, right? Because you see a villain in
Yeah.
a horror movie and you know that it's not just a straight up villain, that there is a backstory to it. And like
Right.
you can find ways of saying like, well, I kind of get how that happened or how, how that person became that, if you look at like true crime stories or things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
do you find that is maybe a little bit the case or?
Well, one of the things that I found just in spending a lot of time thinking about things and even just researching, uh, because as much as I am a fan, to do my homework.
Mhm,
And one of the things I decided to do was to really try to get a better understanding of, you know, horror fans from different angles. Um, and one of the things I happen to find is that look, a lot of us enjoy horror because it is frankly escapism.
mhm,
Now escapism from what? Could be a lot of things, but ultimately, it seems like the things that we've experienced in our lives in one way or another, potentially, are things that have made us kinder, yeah,
mhm,
and more understanding people. Um, so I think that there's something to be said for that. Of course, that's not everybody, um, but it is a common theme for many people.
mhm,
Um, so it's really one of those things that we are to some degree unified by our experiences, which may not have been awesome to some extent in life.
mhm.
Um, so I think that's given us the ability and capacity to sort of, be more compassionate, to be more, to have more empathy towards one another, um, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um, and it's good. It's important that that's the direction a lot of us take it. Um, and of course, like I said, it's not everybody because that's not the way nature works. But
Well, sure, but, I agree. I think that generally speaking, when you have people who come to this sort of element, there's usually something in your own personal experience that sparks your sort of curiosity about, okay, well, here's this thing I experienced that was uncomfortable or difficult or emotionally traumatic for me. How do I make sense of it in some way?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah,
And that does cause you to go deeper into your ability to be compassionate towards others, you know? And isn't like how interesting, right? This is probably not the kind of conversation someone would expect if you're talking about horror. That's all right though. It is true. So let's talk down a little bit about what are some of your favorites, like so if when we're in the genre of horror, what are
mhm.
some of your favorites? Are you big into like psychological thrillers? Slasher TV is obviously are we just full on slasher gore? Where's the sweet spot in horror for you?
See, that's a really good question, actually. I'm the kind of person where I can't have, and the reason is because my tastes are constantly changing and evolving. I like story. I
Mhm,
like good stories. I like good, visual representation. Like that's why I like Poltergeist because it was visually impressive. The
mhm,
special effects were really cool. Um, the story was really interesting. So when you combine all these things together, I'm sitting there and enjoying the heck out of it.
mhm,
Um, so it really kind of comes down to that. Like I will watch um psychological horror if it's a good book. It's not my go-to. Like
mhm.
I like to see like I like creature features, monster movies, that kind of thing.
Oh, monster movies are my absolute favorite. Please show
Yeah.
me ridiculous special effects.
Right.
I'm one of those too, and I've said this before on a couple of the podcasts, but I love when there are the actual like prosthetics and the makeup and the
Yeah.
you know the physical effects not that are not just CGI. And like so
Hmm.
like when you go to like the monster movie realm, especially if you're going to like indie films or B horror movies, like
Yeah.
that's something that I really love because I love the idea that like someone put so much time and effort into like building whatever that monster is, to creating,
Yeah.
the movement of whatever animatronics might be involved. I mean, the craftsmanship that goes into it to me
Yeah.
that is something that I absolutely love.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, that seeing, seeing somebody's imagination kind of come to life in that way, it's really, really cool. Like that's one of the things that, um, I wish I could do better, is sort
Hmm.
of like take the, you know, visual and interpret it into real life somehow. But, that's not one of the skills I've got. But seeing other
That's all
people do
right.
it is always cool.
Hmm.
So it's wild to sort of see like, wow, this is what's in somebody's imagination, and now it's doing this thing. It's
Hmm.
crazy. But yeah, I mean, that's usually my go-to stuff. I do like some of the comedies. I mean, because again, we could thank Joe Bob for this, but some of the horror comedy stuff that the real, you know, B movie or lower,
Hmm.
that's the kind of stuff that I remember from, between him and All Night. Um, seeing things like the Toxic Avenger and
Yeah,
just really wacky, silly stuff. But because it was done in a certain way, it was just fun. Um, so,
I love that's kind of what I do love about, like, the horror movies and things like that, is that there is
mm,
sometimes they intend it and sometimes they maybe don't, but there is a
yeah,
comedic element to some of it that it's so ridiculous, that it's so outrageous, and that is something that I do enjoy very much too, and I do think I don't know, I guess I think comedy can blend well with anything, but I think comedy and horror in particular can be very fun, like, there's a juxtaposition there that is just very enjoyable for me.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're taking two wildly different and opposite aspects, and they're managing to combine them in a way that you kind of only can in, well, to some degree in real life. But it's unexpected things that just break tension, or
Mhm.
that you know, or create tension unexpectedly. So you can have those two opposites working together in interesting ways. Um, and I think that's kind of the fun of it. Um,
Oh, absolutely, and
yeah,
yeah, I think that you need that in real life too, right? Like, you have to be able to find laughter at a funeral, Like, in this human experience, you have to be able to, like, be in the difficult things and find the joyful moment, right? So, like, I do like that element to it as well, right? That you are blending again, maybe it's, in a fictional and more outrageous and more, um, you know, crazy way, but you can relate it back to your individual life and being able to sort of hold those dueling emotions in difficult situations, right?
right, absolutely. Um, I mean, things that were just the things that are more likely to be possible are the things that tend to stress me out. So those are the ones that I don't watch as much, like psychological horrors. That's why I don't
Oh, I
always
see
watch
what you're
them.
saying. That
Um,
yeah.
but the stuff that's more outlandish, I tend to gravitate towards because it's
Mhm.
just, how likely is that to happen tomorrow?
Right.
Um, you
But
know,
that's the nice thing
so
about horror too. Like, no, I don't
yeah,
need to know more about what we're actually, I think that's where maybe I think there is with true crime right now, and I don't know if maybe other people feel that, but I think there's a certain amount of like exhaustion with it, and that people are, looking more for
mm,
the escapism element that that
Right.
that horror does have to offer, not so much looking at the like, okay, yeah, we humans can be really terrible to each other and do awful things. Very aware of
Yeah.
that. Let me go see a monster that comes out of the ocean that can only not eat you if you are drunk.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. I
please and
mean,
thank you.
right. It's things like that I can appreciate watching a, you know, giant ant back in the 50s or, um,
Oh, how fun are
or
those?
yeah, or the latest kaiju movie or whatever, because how likely is that to happen tomorrow? Not very. You know, how likely is something like Violence of the Lambs to happen tomorrow? Turn on the news.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's really wild to see that depending on the kind of fiction, yeah, it can really hold a mirror up to life. Um, and that's the kind of stuff I kind of don't like. But if the story is good enough, um, it's interesting to explore some of the psychology sometimes, but
Hmm.
rarely do I really want to do that.
No, you want to go into the things that are more fun. And
Yeah,
I do. That's something that one of the reasons I do really love monster movies. And,
yeah.
I don't know if you know the movie that I was referencing, but Grabbers is this like weird, I think it was on Netflix years ago. It's this like, there is a like alien sea creature monster thing that like can't eat you if you're drunk. You're poisonous to them if you're drunk. So this island of Scottish people gets themselves holed up in a bar to figure out how to defeat the monster and also get plastered. And I think that's just it. You know what I mean? That's my kind of
Sounds
horror movie
terrific.
right there, right?
Yeah.
Like, how
Then
are we going to defeat this thing? I don't know. We got to get blitzed first, and then we'll figure it out.
I mean that's terrific. Somebody came up with that, put
Somebody
it
came
together.
up with that,
Yeah, and other people, it was fantastic. Um, that's a great thing. Um, that's something I could get behind, you know?
right?
Um, but, uh, but yeah, I mean, those things are, um, watching what you mentioned Netflix, what's cool about Netflix to me is all these really wild foreign films that are coming through. We've seen some really cool, foreign horror.
Hmm.
Um, Train to Busan. I don't like zombie movies very much, but I love that movie. That's a great movie, and it's, in my opinion, one of the best zombie movies I've ever seen. Um, stuff like that. There was, I don't remember if it's called Troll Hunter or something like that. That was it Norwegian or
Troll
something like that?
Hunter. And that was
Yeah, yeah,
oh, I want to say Norwegian or Icelandic. I
yeah,
watched that one. I know what you're talking about, and
yeah.
I
That
know
was
they
amazing.
redid a version of it, an
Yeah,
American version of it. Yeah.
yeah. That was an amazing movie that I didn't expect at all. So there's some really great stuff coming from other countries, and I want to see um, you know, see more of it because
Hmm.
the ideas that other people have, their folklore, their culture,
Yes.
I'm into it. I think it's
Very
really wild
interesting.
to see, yeah, because the things that we have here, sure, we're exposed to, our own cultural phenomenons and stuff like that, but not so much other place.
Hmm.
Seeing a lot of these like Krampus type movies coming out.
I
Um,
love Krampus.
the, the yeah,
Krampus night is 2 nights before it's the night before my birthday, and so, like,
so,
Krampus is, like, I feel like just one of my, like, soul fam friends kinda thing, like, I love the lore of Krampus. I
yeah,
just think it is so fun, and that I don't know if you've ever looked up, like, the parades that they do
oh yeah,
and the
in like Germany
masks
and stuff.
they make
Mhm.
and the getup that they
Yeah,
amazing, and it's what's it like just looking at other cultures, right? And something that is very interesting is how they have these festivals that have these really very, very terrifying, very grotesque,
hmm
and children are
yeah,
there, and it's
Yeah.
isn't that interesting? Like, you couldn't do that in America. Like, how many helicopter moms, no offense, helicopter moms, but like, how many people would pick up a bus? Like, this is too scary for you to have in public. And like in another country, it's like, well, we do this every year. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? And so, but like, again, like, it is interesting to see those differences and that diversity. And that is something that I also love about, because when you were talking about foreign film, I thought about Let the Right One In, which
Mm,
they was a foreign version, and they did an American version, Let Me In later, the child
mm,
vampire thing. But I,
yeah.
I, I do love the original versions of those things because they maintain something about the cultural lore that's attached to that area, right? That is different than
Yeah.
what we experience here. And that is something that I do think is really interesting. It's, you kind of get to learn while you're being entertained, and more to the point of the escapism, you kind of sometimes end up going down a rabbit hole of,
Mm,
well, what is this all about? I need to know more about this lore. What is this monster and this thing in
yeah.
this other culture? It's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really like that about not being so walled off,
Mhm,
to other countries, to other cultures. I'd love to see more stuff come out of, Asia, some of the Eastern European countries,
mhm.
um, South of, like the African countries. I would love to see more horror come out of those places because I don't know too much about them. And I know that they have some really good folklore. Um,
Absolutely.
so to sort of see people putting those stories together that we really don't have any idea about, there's plenty to explore there. And there's plenty of new themes, new ideas that we've never experienced.
Mhm.
We get a lot of same over and over again in many different ways. Um, because let's face it, when we make movies, we have ideas, and those ideas are based on our experiences. If our
Mhm.
experiences are limited, then those ideas are going to be limited.
Absolutely.
But when we expand outward and explore other places, other cultures, um, you know, those limitations sort of fade away. And now we have more opportunities for more interesting stories and fascinating stuff that we may have never considered.
Mhm.
Um, so I really look forward to seeing a lot more of that stuff. And, now that now that slasher is available basically globally,
Oh,
I'm excited to see more people from other places come in. We haven't really made much of a push for it, but this is something that I look forward to quite a bit.
yeah, that is really cool. I love that. I love the idea of like bringing an international community in, because that is absolutely true. What you're saying, that, our lore, our storytelling is limited in the sense of it's what we're used to, right? But
Yeah.
there are these like other ideas and other things available that we haven't thought of
Hmm.
that are sort of, like staples or traditions in other cultures. And that is something that is very exciting to explore, because there's so much possibility there, right?
Yeah.
So that is, what sort of things would you do with slasher TV to sort of expand that, internationally a little bit? Like, what would you say would be something that you would be working on in that realm?
I mean, there's nothing specific. It really just comes down to getting in front of those audiences in those other countries. That's really all it boils down to. It's just creating awareness. We're there, but I don't know how exposed to yeah, people are at this point. Um, so it just kind of comes down to doing what we do and reaching out to those people and putting ourselves in front of them more.
Oh, for sure. And I'm excited to see where that goes. I think it's great. And, again, with the way that you'd set up slasher TV, that there is, that the sort of graphic visual effects and visuals are allowed. I I think that is something that would be of benefit, I guess I would say, to getting people internationally. Partly because you think of, how else would they get their content to American audiences, right? When we do
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
lot of, I don't know if censorship again is the right word, but like obviously the algorithms of our social media and things like that are there. As much as there is a lot of like stuff out there that's, I think in America, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like there's more of like the sex stuff is more accessible than like gore and horror genre elements. It's a an
Yeah.
unusual facet of America. But I think that again, just it's a great opportunity for people who wouldn't normally be able to post their content elsewhere, especially probably places and other international places where they also have like heavy censorship of their internet and things like that, right? That it's an outlet or a platform where you can put those things and not be, again, not be censored, not be booted out because you're being too spooky. But oh, that's what we're here for. That's why we want you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the biggest problem that I've come across here is that horror is terribly censored. And I think that
Mhm.
there's a lot of misunderstanding potentially with why it's censored. Um, if you do a search for hashtag horror on Facebook or Instagram, that is incredibly shocking all by itself, the result that you get, because
Mhm.
they've effectively shadow banned using that hash. Um,
Mhm.
Now they're not making a big fuss about it, but you know,
But if you're in
these,
that realm and you're trying to create
yeah,
content and put it out there in that realm,
right.
that it's like, it's harder for you to get attention. That algorithm is not built to support you.
Yeah. I mean, because not only, so the first strike is using something that's R related or using that hashtag because they're calling it out as problematic, very, very direct.
Mhm.
The other issue is that they use AI for moderation. AI doesn't understand the nuance between special effect and reality.
Right.
So they're going to shut things down very, very quickly when it comes to, what we would perceive as craftsmanship and artistry in
Yeah.
special effects. Because we understand the fact that this is manufactured, it's fiction, it's not real. Um, AI doesn't understand that at this point.
Mm.
So um, these are the things that we have to contend with. And then on top of that, you have to create, as somebody on social media, you have to create content that is compelling enough to earn being viewed by other people. Because
Mhm.
if you create content that's compelling, people like it, people talk about it, now you're revving that engine. What you're doing is you're basically creating something that generates more ad revenue for them
Mhm.
that they can say, oh, okay, this person's cool. They can help us generate more ad revenue. So we're going to put them in front of more people who already want to see them. So if you aren't helping rev that engine, they don't
Right.
care about putting your content in front of people who have said, I want to follow you.
Mhm.
Um, so that's why, I don't do things like that right now. Like we're not using posting algorithm to drive up revenue.
I do.
We don't,
uh,
yeah,
I love that. I appreciate that because it's absolutely true what you're saying.
mm,
And when you are creating content and trying to find who your genuine audience is, not who the ones who can sell stuff, say your audience ought to be, right?
right. Right.
It can become
Yeah.
very frustrating. And so like I really do think I'm so excited about what you're doing because I think that it's revolutionary in the sense of giving people that sort of the idea, at least, that you can create your own community and platform. You don't have to adhere to the Instagram, the Facebook, the TikTok. They're great. Go ahead, do it. But like, really, what a revolutionary thing to say, I'm going to create my own social community app. I'm going to create my own space for my niche thing that is not being necessarily supported or seen on these other,
Yeah.
I don't know, can we say corporate with and not get ourselves in trouble? You understand what I'm saying? It is. It's
Yeah.
way to show people that if there's not a space, the brilliant thing about the access we have to technology today is that we can create that space for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And what a great and I think it's great because it gives other people who might be looking for a space, even if it's not necessarily in horror, right? Like, look at what you've done. You can absolutely build a community and a platform and an outlet for what you're truly trying to do and put out there. And you can, you know, if 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 the powers that be will not create it for you, create it for yourself. I just like that is such a amazing thing.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, it's wild to me to see how social media has evolved since the days of like Friendster and stuff like that, or even just
Oh
like
my god.
AOL. I mean, like things were very, very different. And I think what happened is they've gotten so caught up in turning people into unpaid employees to create all of this content that's generating them ad revenue that
Mhm.
they've lost focus on things that are actually important. Um, while a lot of these companies are um are favoring negativity and arguments and dissent and things like that, I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm trying to remove all of the stress and the nonsense and the garbage that people just don't need to deal with. I mean, really, it
The
comes
things
down
that make
to
social media very stressful and bad for your mental health, right? Like
right.
that's
Yeah.
not what you actually want to use it for. I really
Right.
have to just say I want to repeat what you said because I love it. Unpaid employees. Like kind of just a little bit of a mind blown moment. Like you're a content creator and you are putting things out there into the world. You are trying to build your own brand and your own following. And
Yeah.
for the platform that you are on, you are nothing more than a cog in the machine that builds their wealth, and you're not paid for it unless you find your own following. Right? Like, so that idea of just being on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and being an unpaid employee of Instagram or TikTok because you're
Mhm.
benefiting them just by being on there and they don't do anything in return.
Yeah.
Such a I don't think like that's a perspective that I think it is useful, honestly, for people to look at it that way, especially when you're someone who's, again, a creative person trying to put your stuff out there.
I mean, I see lots of independent people who are just trying to create. They're trying to do something that they love. They're trying to create things, make things, whether it's a book, a movie, podcast, art,
Mhm.
music. It's incredibly difficult for people to find following or there's no such thing as finding a following. Let's face that. The truth is you are either doing something so well and putting so much effort into it that it's basically a full-time job for some of these mainstream social platforms, or you are paying to get in front of people. So
Mhm.
it's you're working for it or you're paying for it. Those are the two ways that they're allowing it to happen. With me, I don't have algorithms for how many people will see your post. It's a matter of how many friends you have and how much stuff did those people post. Stuff is chronological, basically.
Mhm.
So you're not your stuff is not being hidden or praised based on performance.
Right.
It's just relevant and which conversations are going and which aren't. So really, I'm just trying to create opportunity for people who deserve it. That's really what it boils down to is, what kind of opportunity would you like? Would you like to promote your work? Would you like to make more friends? Would you like to have a cool conversation? Would you like to
Mhm.
find, movies you might not have heard of or books or something like that? Um,
And not necessarily the ones that the algorithm has approved, but
Yeah.
finding things that you're actually genuinely would be interested in. And that's a great
Right.
thing too, because, having it built and set up the way you do, there's more opportunity for things that are sort of hidden gems or not known by people that might be really great books, movies, content, art, and that like because they don't fit into the mainstream of what is
Right.
profitable, you might not find otherwise, right? And I think that's really great too because it there is so much amazing content being created that people aren't necessarily seeing,
Yeah.
and again, as creative people, and I think you're hitting on this really well too, it's we don't want to have to spend our time and energy in the space of that hustle culture effort, right?
Yeah.
You want
Right.
to
Right.
be taking your time creating the things that you're actually really passionate about and really being able to put your energy and your effort into making that thing you're creating the best quality it can be, not having to divert your energy, attention, and effort to, well, how am I going to market this in the right way? How am I going to present this in the right way to be able to get attention in the places that
Yeah.
we all think you're supposed to be getting attention from?
Right. Right. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, that that's the be all end all, but what I am saying is can be easier, can be better. Um, I don't that making, I think that figuring out how to squeeze every single penny out of people should be the priority, which
Hmm.
it's become for a lot of the mainstream.
Right.
Um, I think that it's more important to give people things that they actually enjoy and benefit from and, find ways to work with. But to know that some of these platforms are actually, you know, fostering dissent and, negativity and hate and argument and things like that.
Hmm.
Well, slashers rules are built on respect for one another. That's it. Um, it's to keep things fun, to keep things enjoyable for everybody, and to eliminate all the nonsense that just doesn't need to exist.
Hmm.
Um, you know, there are plenty of places to do that. Go to Twitter, go to Facebook, and you'll
Right.
all the junk there that you could possibly want to, revel in.
Hmm.
But Slasher is not that place. It really, I'm part of this audience. I understand this, you know, group of people, because I'm one of them and that's it.
Hmm.
So I just took a look at all the things that I didn't like in these other places and said, okay, how do we eliminate? How do we make this relaxing, fun, and what it should be? Um, and it was really just, okay, so these are the ways that we do this. We create these rules and these guidelines and everything and, offer them up to people, keep it simple, doesn't have to be complicated.
Hmm.
Um, but of course, when the one thing that I will say though, is it's hard for people who create things and sell their work, um, to make it. I will say that social media, even though it can be a good resource, um, it can be a free resource, is not the only way to do things.
Hmm.
Anybody who is trying to run a business needs to have a marketing plan. And I'm talking to all the filmmakers, all the authors, all the podcasters, all the
Hmm.
musicians, all the artists. If you're trying to run a business, marketing is it. You can't just expect to be the creative person and pass it off to somebody else because those people don't really exist until you've proven yourself.
Hmm.
Um, so learn the marketing, understand how the things work, and you know how to achieve your goals. Find the path. You know, social media is a great way to do it, but it is not the only way.
Hmm.
It can't, just because it's not designed that way. Um, so and this is stuff that we're going to eventually be building out more. Is more support for these people who want to promote their work and want to be in front of more people. This is part of the plan. It's really how can we find more ways to connect people
Mhm.
is the fundamental value here, right? And it's for whatever reason, whether it's just like I said, people want to just make friends, they want to talk to people about horror, they want to find new movies, they want to promote their work, whatever it may be. It's still a matter of connecting people. Um, and we're constantly looking at ways, and I'm coming up with ways to do that. And over time, I'm going to start implementing them and making it easier for authors to be in front of people, for filmmakers to be in front of people, for podcasts to be in front of people, to get those listens up, to get those downloads up, to get those, you know, sales up. Because horror fans want more. I want to see movies,
Right.
well, to see the art. I want to listen to the music, but they want to read the books. So why not make those connections easier? And, it's important for me to have these people who especially can create good, to give them the opportunity to do that. Because not only does it give people an opportunity to do what they love, but also to give people who want it the opportunity to have it.
You know,
Um,
that's kind of one of the things that, again, I sort of talk about in my podcast a lot, the idea that we as humans kind of forget sometimes that we are nature every bit as much as the things we call nature
right,
are. And there is a certain amount of harmonious interaction that we're sort of missing out on here because we forget that the things that you really want to do that you're passionate about, if you want to create horror because that's what you're really passionate about, in the sense of nature and harmony, that's your purpose. That's your place in the ecosystem. You're passionate about it because it's what you're meant to do. And it's because there is an audience out there looking for it, right?
right,
Like
right. Mhm.
nature does not create a need for something that, nature doesn't create anything superfluous, right? If you
Yeah,
have this thing that you want to put out into the world, it's because there's somebody out in the world who's looking for it. Right?
right.
And we forget that a little bit, I think, and, we sort of separate ourselves from that element and think that we have to, like, squish ourselves into a box, right, and fit
Yeah,
whatever society's standards are for what we should be doing instead of really following the thing that is our highest joy. And,
yes,
if we would just follow our highest joy, you would find the right audience and because they're out there looking for what it is that you have or you wouldn't wanna create it. Like, that's how nature
yeah,
works, you know?
right. Yeah, it's too complicated. There's too many roadblocks to get, to get down that path.
Mhm.
Um, that really, in my opinion, just don't need to be there. Things can be made easier. Um, it just depends on, you know, what things look like in the surrounding. Oh, look, I might be saying this today, and I might find 3 years from now, things are very, very different. I might
Mhm.
have challenges to handle and figure out, okay, now there are so many people who are trying to do this that nobody can be found. How do I handle it? You know, and in my opinion, it's not going to be, I don't think the answer is going to be, well, charge more money. Um, I think the answer is going to be understand who is interested in what better. And having a three-dimensional understanding of the individual
Mhm.
who has wants and needs is really the best way to do that. Um, but again, I'm not facing that right now. It's something that I am thinking about and trying to sort of plan ahead to some degree, but I haven't gotten to the first step yet to see how people are going to react to it. So really it's going to come down to, okay, I'm putting something out there that I believe will do the things that people need it to do. And, you just need to see how they're going to take to it, how they're going to react to it, how it's going to work for them. And then I'll refine as I go. Um, but you know, I I I can see that things can get complicated in ways like that. But, you know, thinking about it now is helpful because then it'll take less time to handle it later on, because I could say, okay, this happened in this way. I expected that that might have happened. So now, okay, here's how we deal with it without, you know, doing what the mainstream social media has
Right.
done.
Without compromising what you really want, which is to have
Right.
a open space for people to really share
Yeah.
what they're doing.
I mean, I think there's more value in giving people what they actually want and need versus forcing people to pay more. Because at the end of the day, I think that if you're doing what people want and need, the
The
things
audience will
will,
find you. I mean, that's
well, yeah,
it's again,
yeah,
something I say all the time, but there are literally billions of people on this planet. It's not possible that there's not enough for you to have an audience, like it's
yeah,
just not possible. And,
right.
you know, again, it's that idea of what you're talking about, I think, is something that people are so very thirsty for, that it doesn't have to be so
Yeah,
complicated. It doesn't have to be, this idea of like there are just so many gatekeepers to whether or not you succeed in the things that you really want to be doing in life.
yeah,
We don't have to believe in that, and you can create a space. I think that's part of it. This is and what I
mhm,
really do, again, just enjoy about what you're doing is that you're not looking at it in a sense of I'm trying to fight against or compete with social media or anything like that. No, I am trying to create something that is different, that has the energy and the opportunity contained in it that I am looking to make available to people, right?
right,
And it's about focusing on the element of community and collaboration rather than focusing on that element of competition, chasing the dollar, chasing the following, chasing the numbers,
right.
and again, that sort of hustle culture, right? It's because
Yeah,
I agree with you 100%. Things are made so much more complicated and difficult than they really need to be. And, I just think that what you're doing is such a great thing, especially because it shows, hey people, we can, it's social media and the things that exist are, they're great tools and you can't avoid them to some extent. But if
mhm,
they're not providing what you need, you can go and you can make that new thing that is what you need. And you're not the only one who's looking for it.
right, right. I mean, we live in a world that is so complex these days, um, that it feels like anything you want to do takes such a great amount of effort to just understand how to
Yes.
do it, how to get to where you want to go, what pieces need to be in place. Um, and there are fundamentals that exist out there that really haven't changed. It's just the way that they work, has,
Mhm.
I don't know. Well, not the way that they work, but it's
Well,
the
the
details that has
tools
changed.
available, right?
Yeah,
There's
it's not the
so
fundamentals, it's the details that change.
right. And
Um,
it can be very overwhelming too when you're a creator to try to find what path would work best for me and my work.
right, right. Boils down, you know, how are people going to spend their time? Well, there's the time that you want to spend, time that you need to spend, and the time that you have, the time that you want to spend, the time that you need. Um, Most people focus on the time that they want, um, because if more people were doing the things that they need to, they would find things easier. And not necessarily easier, but they would find better understanding of how to do the things they want.
Mhm.
And being able to get there, without so much struggle. Because not to say that it's easy to do, but it's easier if you know, if you understand how to do it, Um, I'm not a mechanic, but if I understood how to change my oil, I would change my oil and save that money. It would cost me the time. So would it, to go somewhere, bring the car, sit there, that's time. Then I have to pay for it, money. So, and it's time to make that money. So how
It's
much time, how many resources am I spending on something?
right.
You know
No,
what I
that
mean?
it's an
Um,
interesting sort of accounting that you have to do for yourself. Like whether it's an
right.
energy you know, dollars and energy of my time and it's again, where am I placing and prioritizing? And no,
Right, right.
it
And
makes a lot of sense because as a creative person, again, how much time is spent on my craft and how much time am I spending trying to get people to see my craft,
right.
right?
It's
And
just like
where
a
is the benefit? Where
Mhm.
where do you maximize the benefit? How do you maximize the benefit, right?
Right, right. It's just about your goal, right? If you want to sell 1,000 copies of your book, reverse engineer it. How do you sell 1,000 copies? What do you need to do? Over what period of time do you plan to do it? If you plan
Mhm.
to take 100 years to do it, fantastic. You could sell 10 books a year. Um,
Right,
but if you want to do it in a month, you have to sort of refine how you're going to, what that path looks like. Um, and it all boils down to how you're spending your time. Um, if you're spending time making money that you'll spend to pay somebody else to do it, cool, that'll work. Um, but if you're not spending money on it, you're not spending time on it, you're not doing anything because you're only making the product. You're not reaching the goal. And that doesn't work. And I see too many people doing that, and it's unfortunate. Um, because people seem to believe there's a magic pill. And well, I mean, there is time or money. And
which one are you putting into it?
right. And I think people just don't want to believe that because there are all these people that make these outlandish claims. And at the end of the day, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Right. Um, so that's why I think it's important for people to educate themselves on reaching their goal. If you want to do something, understand how to do it as completely as you can. Because, you know, um, if you're going away somewhere, if you're going on a trip somewhere, right? You don't stop halfway on the trip to get to your destination and then turn back, do you? No. You keep
Right,
going until you get to your destination. The same concept. It's just that people don't look at it that way. Um, you know, you can't you can't take a trip without movement, without, you know, making progress toward your destination. If you have a car with three wheels and one of them is gone, it's not going to work.
right,
Um, and so it really just boils down to making sure that you have what you need to get and persist, get there, like go. And that's just one of the things I'm very passionate about is just seeing people who are creators really understand the full scope of what's necessary. It's great to have talent, but it sucks when it's just not realized or
mhm,
not utilized with full potential. Um, so things like that are it's disappointing to see, and I feel badly because they understand it. I've been there myself, and it
mhm.
it um, but I think
Well, again, having so many ideas in your head and not necessarily knowing which one to focus on and follow all the time because you have, so many passions, so many interests, so many things that you really want to be able to put out into the world. But again, that is so much also the value of something that is like what you're building that is very specific to this genre, right? Because there is so
mm,
much out there and available, and there is so much sort of like, pinball
yeah,
machine bouncing around that you can do if you're looking at like something broader and more general. But like if horror is where you want to be, like look at here is a platform available to you and you can really focus in on those things, right? And you don't have
yeah,
to be sifting through all of the other things that are on whatever social media platform or whatever other platform you're on,
right,
you can dive into what you want to be seeing,
right,
and so I love this idea. I really think that this is something that is definitely destined to grow and be really a great example, I think, to people of what you can do if if you really see that need for a community around what you're passionate about, you can absolutely build it. It is possible.
Yes.
And, again, just I'm really do think that it's a great thing what you're doing. I'm so excited to see you grow and expand it and to go on there and play around and meet new awesome people because really, I just, again, the community building element when you are a creative person and to have the support even of just knowing that you're not the only one out there who's trying to do a thing, right? It's
Hmm.
so very valuable. It is so very and that you have information that is also useful to people, right? That they can come here and it's camaraderie and community, but also tools and resources.
Hmm.
And, you know, again, what a great example to people. If you build it, they will come. I believe that that is true.
Well, even one thing to that. Um, I hate to rain on that parade, but
Everyone
um,
tries to, don't worry.
but no, I believe if you build it, it can be great,
Mhm.
right? But what you need to do is people need to know. That's
Right.
the missing link. And if
I
you build it because of people, then they will come. So that's just the part that I find a lot of people are just leaving out because I used to believe that too. And then I built it. No one,
Yeah, no, I get you. I understand what you're saying. But that again, you know, the value of what you're doing and putting out there is the
yeah,
example and is the tools and the resources for people who might
yeah,
need whatever that extra step is. Again, there are the roadblocks that don't need to be in the way. And
right, right,
if you can show that to people and if you can be sort of a guiding light in the sense of showing people that, it can be easier, it can be less complicated. Maybe that is all that is required for some people. Again, there's the
yeah,
mindset element too that if you can just get yourself shifted into the right space, you can then be
yeah.
acting out of the right space, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really the hope for all this is to really just help people. And if I can help people achieve the things they want to achieve, that- that's amazing. Um, but there's a lot to it, and I'm still there's a lot to learn. Everybody has their own goals and ambitions and everything, and it's like, okay, well, I understand the end result, but there's a lot of details in between,
Hmm.
um, in order to facilitate some of that stuff. So these are the things that I'm constantly refining and figuring out, and it's like, all right, well, the goal is relatively simple, but there's nuance to that. There are details that you know there's a lot in the mix to think about as time goes on and as
Hmm.
something new is discovered. And it's cool. It's exciting and fun to have the opportunity to even attempt something like this. And you know, I'm very confident in where we are right now. I'm very comfortable in the space, and I'd like to see you know how many more things we can do and help people be successful with. Yeah, I think that's really it. But yeah,
I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be great. I am already enjoying playing around in there, and I think it's just going to grow and blossom into just the most magnificent black rose type flower on the interwebs. So I like always want to be respectful of everyone's time. I want to thank you so, so much for joining me.
sure.
Please do tell the audience how to find you, where to go.
So Flasher is available on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store for Android and iOS. It's also available through www.𝓕𝓻𝓪𝓷𝓴𝓲. And you can find us at the Splasher app on Instagram, X, Facebook, YouTube, and all the other wonderful places.
All the other wonderful places you can find it. Well, thank you so much. Damon Della
Thank
Greca,
you.
Slasher TV app. If you are a horror fan, please do go look at it because it's really an exciting community you're building. And I think it is going to be a beautiful success. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hi again, friend. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the No Small Stories podcast. Do check out the links below in the description so you can find more information on this episode's guest. And if you would like to And if you'd like to support more episodes of the No Small Stories podcast, you can become a patron. Find us on patreon.com/no small stories. Do also follow us on Instagram at No Small Stories Podcast. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, leave a review, do all those wonderful things that you awesome listeners can do. Until next time, friends, remember, no matter how small you start, your story is always a big deal to us.